Hey guys, so if you were here, I'm assuming that you've already checked out my non spoilery hot take review of With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. And so if you are here, it's because you A, don't mind spoilers, or B, have already read the book and want to have a discussion with me about it. So let's dig right on in. So the things that I mentioned in my video with my non spoiler review about why I would give this book a 3.5 star rating instead of maybe a strong 4 or 5 is because it took me a while to get in the book. And it's not just the things that I mentioned in my video about struggling to read, but it's just some of the things that I found problematic with the character's voice. So I try. This is the third time I filmed this video, so hopefully the sound will be a lot better this time. But I started counting. Well, okay, so let's talk about the things, the good things. Start with the positives, Quanna. Okay, so one of the things that I love about this book is that it is broken down into 3 parts. And at the beginning of each part, you get these little recipes. And I haven't tried them yet, but I thought that that was a nice touch. Very reminiscent of like water for chocolate. The downside of this is that the recipes were all kind of like drink related, and in the book, Imoni's character, she makes a lot of hearty dishes, and so I really would have loved to see one of those recipes in the book instead of all of these recipes like lemon verbena, strawberry shake, things of that nature. And I kind of felt just like, oh, I mean, I guess that was, on one hand, I could see that that would be a very obtainable and very easy recipe so that students, if they didn't have access to the kitchen and to things of that nature, they'd be able to make these recipes. But I thought it would be nice to kind of have some more recipes that would be like Imoni style, and maybe that could have been something that was in the back of the book or even a companion piece. So, Elizabeth Acevedo, if you take my idea, you know, at least run me an acknowledgement, okay? Um, but when the first chapter starts, we get introduced to the main character's daughter. She's literally, the first word out of her mouth is baby girl. And just in that first chapter, which is 3 pages long, she says baby girl instead of the baby's name. Like, I think I counted like 18 times. I could be wrong about that. I counted it last night and it was tired. I was tired. I was a hot mess. But she counts 1, 2, 3 on the first page, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 times before she leaves the house. So she leaves the house on page 7. It starts on page 5. And so there's 11 mentions of baby girl. And that is her nickname for her daughter. And those of us who have kids, we all have nicknames for our kids. Like I had only half of the time call my kids by their name. But unless I'm like screaming at them or trying to get them to do something, I'm not saying their name, consecutively that many times. And it just felt so heavy and so much. And it was like, oh, Dad, okay, we get it. The little girl's nickname is Baby Girl. And it was almost annoying. And she does that so frequently within the first 30 pages that I was just like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to keep reading this book. And it wasn't a judgment, I don't think, because listen, my nicknames for my kids are not that great, but it just felt like it was just too excessive, it too much, and it was like we weren't getting to meet the character outside of her obsession with her daughter, which I get it, young mom, what else does she have going for her? It just didn't feel authentic. Another thing that didn't feel authentic is that there are times when the character speaks so poetically that it reminds me of when Dawson's Creek was out in the 90s, and everybody was like, why in the heck do these teenagers sound like they just swallowed a whole behind dictionary? And there were times when Imoni's character sounded like that, but by her own admission, she wasn't a good student. She didn't seem to read a lot. And at one point, her counselor even calls her out of it and says, when did you become a poet? And I laughed when that happened because it happens like kind of later in the book. And I was like, well, daggone, I'm glad somebody said it. And so I think it was just a flow over from the author's first book, her critically acclaimed book, The Poet X. And so I just felt like that voice wasn't authentic for this character. Now, there were characters in the story that I thought could have used that poetic voice and it would have fit their personality a lot more than Imoni's character. And I think it would have made the story have an added layer, especially for those characters that are a bit more flat. There is a friendship with her best friend named Angelique. Angelique is has been her best friend since childhood. She's her ride or die. There's a lot of attention paid to the fact that Angelique is a lesbian, and she has recently, more recently, come out and is dating this older girl. She's not significantly older. I think the girl is in college, um, but there weren't a lot of moments where we get to see Angelique and Imoni actually bonding. There's a couple of times when they're walking to school and they're talking about kiss my goddaughter for me and that kind of thing, but I really wanted to see like some girlfriend moments, like some moments where they were just together and they weren't talking about men and they weren't talking about the little girl, and they were just being kids together, like a shopping trip or something. That would have been really nice. And there's a moment in the book that does that. So I don't know if you guys read this. Remember that Angelique gets accepted into the college that she wanted to get into, and so she calls Imoni up and she's like, I got in, I'm gonna come over right now. And it was kind of funny because it was late at night and her abuela had already gone to sleep, but she's like, okay, come on over. And then that was it. Like she says, come over, and then we don't get to see them bond and celebrate each other. And I was like, that was such a missed opportunity. Like, like I would have loved to see. I think in the next scene, her father comes over, and I would have loved to her say, "Hey, Dad, we can have this conversation right now, but you haven't been here for me, and my girlfriend is coming over, and she just got into the college, and she has been here for me. So I'm about to come into this kitchen real quick and whip up a quick little snack, and you can keep talking." Like something that would have just given us like that fact that Angelique has been her ride or die, and she wanted to celebrate her. So I thought that that was a missed opportunity. Um, the only character outside of Imoni that we really get to see a lot of layers to is Abuela. We find out that Abuela, they tease that she has possibly been sick, but actually she's just out here living her best life and trying to get her old lady swerve back. And I could appreciate that because it was a nice juxtaposition to Imoni, who is now a new mother and has to give her all. And it really speaks to the sacrifice that moms have to, oftentimes, more often than not, mothers have to have more so than fathers. And there is a conversation about that, the fact that the baby daddy gets to go out there and sow his wild oats and do his thing, and even his mother judges Imoni for the things that she's trying to do for herself that are actually like the things she should be doing for herself, like going to school, trying to learn a trade so she can get a job. And like she's dating for the first time since she had the baby, and so there's a lot of judgment paid on her, on some of the missteps, not really missteps, but just her trying to be a completely fulfilled person so that she can be a completely fulfilled person who raises a completely fulfilled person. And so there is a nuggets of conversation that we see that with Abuela's kind of a reawakening. And um I'm hoping, it seems like Imoni is starting to internalize those lessons, but it's not fully fleshed out for me, so that was a little bit of a weak point. And then finally, there is a romance element of the story in her relationship with Malachi, the new boy, because in YA there always has to be a new kid. Um, I guess I shouldn't really judge that because there's a new kid in my YA book that I'm working on. So hello, but anyhow, he's a new kid, and we don't know if he's a bad boy, if he is a player. Turns out he's just a really good guy who has been through some things, and he is in strong like with her, and we don't get insta love, which I can appreciate. It seems like Elizabeth Acevedo has either one been a avid reader of YA herself and has realized that insta love is unrealistic, and it's pandering to the audience because the audience does want to see some development. And so I was really appreciative of that element. But then when it was time to get the payoff to the very long drawn out relationship building that we had been getting, we don't get the payoff. And if it was just about the character kind of realizing on her own terms that that's not what she wanted, I would have been like, okay, fine. I'm all for women empowerment and women coming to understand that they don't need a man to define them and all of those things. But I didn't think that it was realistic. So the part where they're in Spain and they're about to do the do or whatever, and then they decide that they're not going to do the do. And this is what we get. They get this very heavy scene of them kissing, and like she is actually, she says this. Um, oh, where's he keeps kissing my neck. This is on page 339. He keeps kissing my neck, and then my hands are everywhere. I need to touch his skin, his shoulders, his back. I kiss his ear, and he moans into my neck. That feels good too. And this was new too. This power of making a boy jump or moan. So there's a moment where she feels powerful that he desires her. And then they're kissing, they're kissing, they're kissing. He's undoing her zipper, and then she's like, pause. I think, pause. Now, I think we should wait. It would be romantic in Spain, your first time, all of that. It'd be like a story, but. And then he very quickly, very quickly gets himself together and is like, okay, okay, understand, you know, consent laws. And he's like, okay, all good, give me a second. But he says, give me a second, but then he hugs her as he's trying to calm himself down from his likely little teenage erection. And I was like, pause, flag on the play. This is completely unrealistic. Like, who, like, first of all, it's not unrealistic that he would still be touching her, because it would be realistic if he was touching her and hoping that she was going to change her mind. If he is genuinely like, okay, I'm woo, woo, okay, woo, stop. Like, he's not touching her. If he's genuinely like, okay, you call timeout and I'm gonna do that. Okay, you go over there on that side of the couch. Let me just get myself together. Okay, now we're good. Now I can function again. So that part was just unrealistic. But then afterwards, she's watching him get himself together. We don't get any of her internal thoughts. We don't find out whether she feels guilty because she's, made, she's sexually aroused him and then she's called time out. And so then she says maybe. And to make myself brave enough to ask what I want and not to be rushed into what I'm not ready for, which is fine, completely fine. But she says maybe we can try other things. And he's like, yes, ma'am, we will do the other things. And so, of course, you can imagine, use your imagination. I will not talk about it, what they're doing. All right, so fine. Okay, again, I'm completely okay with that. We don't need Insta loves and we don't need sex in YA. But then they are quasi dating, quasi friends with benefits. And then prom comes and she decides, I don't have the money for prom, so I'm not going to go. But he goes to prom, and then he comes over. Abuela really wants her to go to prom so she doesn't miss out on that experience. But she's like, no, I just really don't want to go. And Abuela says this, you're a woman soon, but for the next month and a half, enjoy high school, go to prom. And she says, the only thing I want to do on prom night is hang out here, watch J-Lo movies, and make delicious snacks. What do you think? And I just couldn't help but thinking that didn't seem authentic to her character. Like, here you have a man friend that you could go to prom with. Like, I've very rarely, if ever, met someone who did not want to go to prom simply because they didn't want to go to prom. It was either a money issue, which, okay, there's a little bit of that here. But Abuela's like, nope, here, I got some money for you. You're going to go to prom. Your best friend will be there. Your man friend will be there. Just go to prom. And so she doesn't. And she says, she leans her forehead against mine. Well, Nina, I think we could live with that. And a week later, that's exactly what I do. Malachi goes to prom, but leaves early and joins us at the house. He brings me a bright red rose and tucks my hand into his suit pocket, and we slow dance to a corny Jennifer Lopez song. Baby girl and Abuela clap when we're done. And it's exactly the memory I wanted. Now, two things about this passage that kind of pissed me off. One, rushed, again, telling us instead of showing us them dancing, showing him, letting us see him knock on the door and say, what are you doing here? I wanted to spend the rest of my prom with you. Like, what? Like, give us those corny little feels. Give us that. Don't shortchange us on that. We've been waiting for this. Because even if that was it and that's the end of it, like, how sweet would that have been? But then the second thing is, why does the Jennifer Lopez song have to be corny? Because I'm imagining if they're slow dancing, it's because it's like an R&B song. But then that's another thing. Who is dancing to an R&B Jennifer Lopez song? Now, There have been a lot of mentions of music in this, and most of them are from Latinx people, and I don't have a problem with that. Like the first time in the book that they mentioned Mark Antony, I was like, yes, I love me some Mark Antony. Like if you have not listened to Mark Antony and Tina Arena sing the main song to the Zorro soundtrack, "Spend My Lifetime Loving You," oh my gosh, that is like one of the most beautiful songs ever, right? I'm gonna link it down below. However, like it's a slow dance. There's so many other people that you could have mentioned, and I mean, let's face it. Like you mentioned a slow Jennifer Lopez song. Well, I can't think of a single one that I would dance to. Like maybe waiting for tonight, the slow down version instead of the dance party version. There's so many other people that you could have that she could have mentioned. Like I would have loved to have seen them like um, dance to Selena's "Dreaming of You." Like, could you? Like, I could hear that in my head. Like they're dancing this, "Cause I'm dreaming of you tonight." That would have been so cute. Anyway, that is essentially the last time we see Malachi. We don't see Angelica again. They show up for 2 seconds to take a group photo at graduation. We don't get any conversation from them. We don't get a, "Hey guys, we did it." None of that. We get Abuela talking, Julio talking, Amoni talking. We don't get any conversation between. I mean, even when they do the promotion ceremony, um, like none of this. Like Pretty Leslie gets a line. "Can I get in too?" We don't get a single line from Malachi or from Angelica after that. And I was just like, at that point, I was like, okay, well, it was a nice little book, but that was the end. That was it. And I was so disappointed because those were the relationships that held her down, and it was nice, I guess, that she had made amends with her father. But at the end of the day, I think that those acts of forgiveness are important. But what was more important was, here are the people who had gotten her through the last year. Let us see something with them. Like they could have even shown like a little. She could have written a little scene where they go back to the ice cream shop at the end and they sit around and they talk about what happens now. So again, I know that when you critique a book, you can't always think about it as like what would you have done differently, but as a reader, those were just things that I wish we would have gotten. So overall, the book as a whole was really, really enjoyable and pleasurable. There were nuggets in there that I thought were very interesting, and it wasn't trash at all. But it just took a little while to get into, and it was a little disappointing at the end. And so that's why I would give it like a 3.5, 4 rating at the most out of 5. So let me know down below in the comments what you guys thought about this. Did you enjoy the book? Have you read the book? Do you plan to read the book? And if you've read Like Water for Chocolate, did this book remind you of that? I kind of wish there would have been more magical realism in it, since we were doing a chef with recipes and they kept talking about how her food made them feel. But you know, it's grounded in the real world, so you're not going to get everything you ask for. So that's it for now, guys. Until next time, toodles.